How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the What's Up Eddie channel, Divine Therapy Sessions, and of course, I'm the one and only Eddie. So glad to have you guys back, and these are my Divine Therapy Sessions. And in today's Eddie's Life Hack, lesson number 31, we're going to talk about a story that I have about my when I was adopted, in that there are no coincidences in the world. I don't believe that there is. I believe that everything, whether it's in a small way or a big way. Another good way to say that is the microcosm to the macrocosm, and literally there is no coincidence whatsoever. I believe that everything has a purpose, everything has a grander plan, even when it seems chaotic or disastrous. I do believe that it has a bigger it has a bigger meaning to it, right? So, and I think these are, you have to be spiritual, and some people don't. Some people believe that we're just living a life and life is just normal. We get up, we have to go do this 9 to 5 thing, and then we go back to it, and then we die at some point. Maybe we get rich, maybe some things might happen in our life that are cool, but I just don't believe that. I really don't. There's too many things that happen in my life, and there's too many things now since waking up from the old style of thinking, right? Or the old way of being. And there's just too much going on, way too much going on. But I say this story too because it's inspiring, and there's hope. And just know that, like, everyone's story, and this is why I have so much love in my heart and so much, I want for the next person. I hate to see people suffer, man, because I know what it feels like. I experienced that stuff when I was a kid, man. Like when a little boy, I always say that I had lost my smile when I was, and that is deeply embedded into my subconscious, that I got my childhood stolen from me. And I did, but like, at some point I'm going to have to let that go. And that's what is going on at the moment, right? Or in the last 6 months. So it's a really cool story. Okay. So I was adopted when I was 15 years old, and that concept alone already can tell you that, like, dude, who gets adopted at that age anyways, right? Like, that's pretty outstanding, right? Also know that, like, it came with a lot of issues, because at 15, before I got to this household, I already had all the pain and suffering and bad teachings, or not, I guess can't say bad, but like just teachings that weren't going to serve me at that time period, because it was a less chaotic environment, right? So just to give you a backstory before I got adopted, right? So I lived with my parents. I ended up, from my parents, went to my uncles, and then from my uncles, I went, and then I got adopted. So that's from 1 to 15, right? Of course, there's many things that happen in between there, but we're just for the purposes of time, we're going to talk about the adoption story. So it's kind of crazy because, so I hadn't seen my brothers, especially my twin brother, and we're fraternal twins. We don't look alike, so don't get any ideas out there. No, I'm just kidding. So, yeah, so how did it go? Yeah, we hadn't seen each other for about 5 years at that point, me and my twin brother. And I remember it started out, and this is strange in itself, all right? So, like, we all went our separate ways, and I had no idea that where my brothers were in the world. I felt very alone. And so I remember going through, at my uncle's, I went through middle school, at the end of elementary to middle school, went through all the middle school at my uncle's house. And then from there, 1 year, or like, it was like half a year of high school or something like that. And I remember so it's just crazy in itself, right? So I go to a certain high school. The high school is called Lucerna. And mind you, I haven't seen my brother in like forever. So I remember it was probably like, I think it was the first week of high school. I ended up running into my twin brother. I hadn't seen him for like years. Now he tells a different story, but I don't remember punching him in the stomach. I really don't. That's what he says, but I think that he conjured up some craziness there. But so mind you, you haven't seen your brother or your sister. Put yourself in my shoes, right? I hadn't seen my brother in 5 years. We both look at each other, and he, like, for me, I look the same. Apparently, I think I did as a kid. I still look the same. He looked like a whole different dude, right? And he's like, "Hey, Eddie. And I was like, "What's up? Who are you?" And he's like, "Dude, I'm your brother." And I was like, I stopped, and I just remember like getting pale, and I was like, "What?" And we just kind of tripped out, and like, I remember like that little moment of like crying, like, "Dude, what happened to you? Where have you been?" Like, and then he explained a little bit of the backstory. We didn't have much time because we had to get to class, but like, I just remember like, what the heck? I can't believe this. Like, I'm not alone in the world anymore, right? And I remember there was a time period, I think for about 3 or 4 months, where like I wasn't allowed to talk to my brother because he was actually living with me over in my uncle's place. But like, you guys, it was a mess. We lived a messy life. And long story short, I ended up having to leave my uncle's because of abuse and neglect and these sorts of things, right? And I remember there was only one place that I knew to go because so I didn't tell you that somewhere in the 4-month period I went to go visit my whole family because they're all living under one roof. And I ended up finding out that, you guys, all of my brothers were adopted. All of them were under the same house. Can you imagine how I felt when I got to that place and I saw all my brothers together? And I'm still out in the cuts, right? I'm still in hillbilly town. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, and it was amazing too, because I remember, seeing my little brother for the first time. I had never seen him in my whole life. This guy is new to me, right? I'd never seen him. And it was just a trip. I remember the story in itself is just crazy. If I tell you the whole deep story, it's unbelievable, right? And kudos and praise to the 2 people that adopted us, right? Like, they adopted 5 kids. And mind you, we're all in a wide variety of ages. Stemming at that time period, I was at the age of 14, 15, and going all the way down to, so there was 3 of the older ones and then 3 of the younger ones, right? Can you imagine that? A house full of boys that they had, and they only had a daughter before, right? Wow, who does that? I remember even now I even tell them, and then people tell them too, is like, are you guys crazy? You must be. And we're all guys, right? But yeah, you guys, I remember, so going back on some of the details, how could this be a coincidence that I go to a high school, and mind you, my brothers have their own story. They went through a period of going through a foster system. They went through a period of getting taken away, all that stuff, right? Now, this is my story, and I don't want to impede on other people's stories, but the odds of us actually seeing each other again were slim to none, right? So for us to run into each other like that, it was preordained, predestined, right? And also just the odds of like them all living in the same city as the city that I was in, right? That they got adopted from these people and ended up living in that area. What are the odds of that? That there is no, like, it was supposed to happen that way. And I remember, like, I'm being the lighter son, right? And most of my brothers are darker, so my adopted mother happened to be fair skinned, right? And my dad's name was actually Eddie. His name is Edward, right? My adopted father. And it just was perfect, right? Like, it was like I was the last one that I ended up coming over and getting adopted. Obviously I had to be taken away from my other environment, but it just worked out perfectly, right? And I just remember, and then they had just bought in that house. That's another detail. They had bought in a bigger home that could fit us. And then they didn't even have a reason to buy that before, but they bought it. And this is what I'm talking about, you guys. There's so many spiritual principles to this, but they were listening to their subconscious, right? Something was telling them to go bigger, even though that it wasn't even in their conscious mind, right? That's the subconscious talking to them. Also, can you imagine embracing 6 boys who have gone through suffering and pain, right? Like, I'm talking about like complete neglect, abuse, you name it. There's a lot of stuff there, right? And for these people to do that, like these are we were watched out for, right? Like, though I went through the suffering that I went through, had I not gotten adopted, you guys, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be talking to you guys. And you guys, I still got adopted, and I almost still lost my life due to alcohol and drugs, right? So I can only imagine. I know for a fact I wouldn't be here. I would be in some type of gang violence. I would either have been in prison, or I would have lost my life, whether that be from someone else's hands or my own. And so what do we get from this story, right? Like, I believe that there can't be, there's more to this world. And I've been privy to knowledge and privy to outer body experiences that I'm just telling you guys from my perspective, from my truth, that there's way more that goes on with the 2 eyes, right? And that there are the higher beings, which I like to call God. God ordains certain events, right? And that we have certain things in our lives that are meant to happen because you and I signed up for that, right? Now you ask yourself, Eddie, how could you say that? Did you sign up to be abused as a little boy? Yes, I did. And it sounds crazy, right? Like, but to get your mind past that aspect, but you guys, it's the honest truth. I believe it in my heart that, like, each person, so I went from 3 different households. Mind you, I after my high school years, I did my own stuff, right? Built my own little families. But those are all, how do you say, milestones, in my mind, right? Like, so those are hard, concrete, definitive moments that are in my storyline, whether that be with my biological parents, my uncle, to my adopted parents. I believe that those are 4 major contracts that I signed up for being in this platform, right? Because you and I don't really know, and I'm only going off of my intuition and what has been told to me, right? What I channel, and this is what I tell you guys, and I say this for you guys for a reason, right? That I want you to look at your lives in a different aspect, and that's what I got to do, and it's changed my life. It's not as simple as we think it is, and when we look at it like that, as life's not happening to me, it's happening for me, because I wouldn't be the same person that I am today had those things didn't happen to me, right? I wouldn't have anything to say. I would have something to say, but I wouldn't have anything as exceptional as I have to say today, right? I've been through a ton of experience, and like, thank God that I am extremely smart, and that I have a really, really strong intuition, and that this waking up process, I was able to put so many beautiful things together, right? And then I have a imagination, a creative mind like no other, and I thank God now that I went through that stuff, because getting on the other side, and that's another thing, getting on the other side of it, right? It was really hard for me to accept what happened, and that plagued me, and it was like a curse on my back for so long. And it created a lot of resentment. It created a lot of animosity, a lot of pain, suffering. And obviously all those events, carried on in my life, and it was a painful struggle, and it was a reoccurring loop, and I could never get out of it. Up until now, I really couldn't have. And And it's crazy because the one thing that was holding me back, and it was the hardest thing to let go because it had become my messiah in a you know, I guess in an immature way of saying it, alcohol and drugs became my messiah because it got me away from the pain that I was feeling. And the terrible part about this is that once you get away from that, you have to re-experience the pain again. And I say all this just to tell you guys is that, like, there's hope. This story is of hope. It's of love. It's of that no matter what you're going through out there, that God is watching out for us. And, you know, the one thing that I can always say is that I always believed that I called him my father because, you know, I felt like I never really had a mentor like that. I obviously I did, but not in the aspects of you can always wish. I wished it was my biological father. It didn't happen that way, right? But I always prayed to God, right? And I believed that God was watching out for me. And I think that belief and faith and hope got me through some really, really tough times. And what does that tell us? Is that hope alone can get us through anything. And I say that in another video. So these concepts came from suffering, you guys. So just know that, like, if you're out there watching this and you resonate with this story somehow, or it touches you, that it's speaking to you. This is a process. Everything that I just told you right now is my spiritual experience. It's what it was. All that stuff was gearing me up for what is to come now. And you guys will see the advancement and the love and the blessings. And I'll show that to you guys as well on my channel. But what I say this whole story is to tell you guys this, is that hope, love, perseverance, prayer, God, and that all of this is happening. It's not just a coincidence that we're not just walking around. There are some people, I believe that there's people who are low vibrational, who are working in the means of to harm others. So they're working just in self. There's the people in the middle that are, and mind you, I've been in all three of these. So this is how I know. Low vibrational, which is self, who hurt other people, right? Because they're hurt. The ones in the middle who are just trying to get by, that don't know up from down, and that are stuck in I call it the real world thinking. And the real world thinking doesn't get us anywhere. And not to talk down on others, because if that's where you're at, that's where you're at. But this is the reason why I make this channel, is because there's something more than the 9 to 5. There's something more than, which sorry guys, got a little text came up. There's something more than a 9 to 5. There's something more than just getting up and feeling like a slave to a system that isn't working, for one. And also these old paradigms of being in relationships where there is no love, or feeling like we have to be a certain person, that there's no authenticity, that if we spent a whole lifetime or a whole quarter of our life in college, in high school, and then we go into this job that is now that they plateaued or they're suffering, they still feel like they need to be there because I already spent my whole life on education. I can't evolve past it. That's that old paradigms. Those are old paradigms that don't work for us anymore. And that's all I try to say to you guys, is that once you expand, let go, and then look at the deeper, that we can get into the higher vibrations. And those high vibrations, anything is possible. There is infinite potentiality. And in this infinite potentiality, it has you and I being in a place that we thought we could never be. Because, and this YouTube channel explains it. If you just watch the videos, you can even tell from the first video that I made all the way to now, how the evolution, how is it that I keep, and I'm not even the same guy that I was last month. And this is going to continue to happen. And this is the promise, that there is a promise, and that there is this guidance is for you as well. And if you're listening to this and you've gotten this far to 19 minutes, you guys are in a spiritual awakening, and you're meant for so much. And once you find your purpose and your thing in life that you're supposed to do, God, woof, I root for you that you find that, because it's infinite, you guys. God has so much available to you. And when I say God, don't get hung up on the words. If you don't believe in that, just believe that there's more out there. And that's all I've been trying to say this whole video, is that everything's happening for a reason. Whether the wind blows, hits you in the face, and gets some hair in your eye, and then you look over and then you see a person and they say hi to you, just know that it's happening for a reason, whether you know it or not. Whether you see, for whatever reason, all these situations in your life have a purpose. And you know, there's theories on this, chaos theory. There's things that once we open our mind and learn and actually start, because there's the topics that we learn in school aren't, none of it's hogwash at the end of the day. It's all the conscious mind. When we dive deep into the subconscious, we start to realize that there's way more available to us. All right, guys, that's all I got for my story. I love you guys. Catch you in the next one. Give me a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe. All right, guys.